I am Sivareena. I'm the co-founder of FRUGALLY. I hope you guys are having an amazing evening interacting with such folks. I mean, this is all new and we are trying to adjust to this new normal. It seems so different for me to present like this. Yeah, I think we are trying to adjust to it. So I think firstly, I'll start by saying, thanks to Lakshya, WTM, and folks for coming up with this amazing sessions and curating all these virtual sessions to help us share and learn. I think as I was introduced, I run FRUGALLY, which is a women's health platform. So the way I want to do this is take you through my journey and help you, with some of the key takeaways, which can, maybe help you build your own product or help you scale your product at whichever stage you're at. I know there are Q&A sessions towards the end. This feels very one-sided, but I do want to make sure that if you guys, have any questions, I think Lakshya and her team are trying to make sure that, we keep it more engaging. So you guys can, just shoot off any of these questions around or, maybe interact with me while I'm sharing my journey. Right. Yeah, let me just begin with talking about how we started FRUGALLY. So just a sec. Yeah. So how many of you guys are, I'm just trying to gauge the audience. How many of you guys are actually building a product or are at the early stages of, starting up? So, most of my network or most of the women I meet are always talking about, how do they start up? They have so many things they are motivated about, or there's so many things they, want to solve or are empathetic about, right? So, so my constant question to them is, do you know why you're trying to solve a problem, or do you know why you're trying to build what you're trying to build? So I'm not sure, if you guys can understand what this picture depicts, right? You see like a typical iceberg. You see like a situation where you just see the top part of it, and you really don't understand the depth of the iceberg to even navigate through certain situations, right? So the way we look at this typical iceberg problem is to constantly question us that have we understood the why of the things, right? So the motivation to start a company or a product is different for everyone. So for example, for me, it was we started FRUGALLY almost 3 years back. For me, it was my cousin. So my cousin underwent a miscarriage, and that's when it triggered me to move into this space. So that being my motivation. So my cousin, is just like any one of us. She's working. She's part of a nuclear family. She mostly does, find solutions to her health problems via Googling or self-diagnosing, and the doctor Google becomes a solution for all. But when she actually underwent this miscarriage, that's when actually the perception changed. So in an era where you are actually going digital for almost everything from food, travel, and everything else, somehow health seemed to be left behind. And that's where we wanted to step in, right? And that being the tip of the iceberg, we really had no clue how to solve it or how to go about it, right? And most of the time we were just asking ourselves that why are we solving the problem that we wanted to solve, right? And it's a repetitive question. It's not just when you're starting, it's actually about every single time that you make a move in your company, you have to ask this question. And I think that's when we actually just began a journey in this space. We started researching, we started interacting with a lot of mothers. And that's what brings me to the next point here is, most of the entrepreneurs ask me that, even though you have identified a problem, you have identified the sector you want to get into, the problem you want to solve, how do you actually validate any of your ideas? How do you actually go about it? And I'm sure this is we're not alone in this journey. Everyone, every company who is successful today or who is at a scale today has gone through a phase where they actually didn't know how to go about a problem. And most of the companies have solved it by spending millions of dollars on it, and we try to do it as frugally as possible. And I think that's something which I would like to share with you guys, is to figure out ways in which you can validate some of your ideas frugally, right? The initial days, you really don't have like a lot of financial cushion to play around with, but you still want to position your product or position your solution in a way that works best for the users. And some of the ways that actually have helped us is using free tools. So I'll just take you through the journey as well, where, once we identified that we wanted to help our cousin and women like my cousin, we started interacting with a lot of mothers outside hospital. So we would spend like, typically an hour and a half after work, where we would just sit outside OBGY chambers and interact with them. And what we did was we started connecting them in a WhatsApp group, right? And WhatsApp community. All we did was, talk to a network, bring in some of the mothers on board, and, help them start the interactions with the newbie moms or women who are pregnant, right? So that became our initial, research or the study phase, which you would say, where we started understanding what actually these women want, what they're actually going through, what are they asking, what are the problems they actually face, not just the problems that we see, that there are so many miscarriages happening or there are so many troubles trying to conceive. These are very broadened problems, but you want to get into the depth of the problems, where you understand, pinpoint the problem, and provide solutions around it. So for us, WhatsApp did the trick. It was really good for us to understand the insights. We were, just with 220 mothers in the initial phase, and maybe 5 to 6 odd mothers from our community, we were actually clocking 100,000 conversations in just 4 months of the launch of the WhatsApp community. This was not even the product. We were not even, out there in the market talking about Preg Buddy. It was just the phase where we were trying to understand. And it gave us so much of insights on what they want, that we actually, when we launched a product, we saw a huge rise in the adoption of the product, because we didn't just launch the product and iterate and spend a lot of money on getting our initial users. We actually spent the entire effort in giving time and understanding what the users want. And we did it in the most frugal way possible by using free tools. I would just help you out with, telling you some of the other tools which you can use. There's so many out there. Some of them are just making prototypes. There's a funny incident where we actually had our Marvel prototypes, and we were sitting, at Prost and just having dinner and some drinks, and where, we just saw a pregnant couple walk in, and we were like, just taking our Marvel prototype and talking to them, and they were just so helpful in, helping us understand how the product is, what she would use, what she wouldn't use, how would it actually affect the husband who would be using the problem. And just within an hour, where you were just having a casual dinner, you actually were able to find so many insights around what you were building. And this really did not require a lot of money for doing that, right? So, some of the things which we take pride in is our growth, which we had with $0 spent on marketing till date. And the way we used multiple channels to support our tech costs, to support our, our testing phases, to support our translation efforts. All of these have been done with huge money, and we take pride in doing it at as low cost as possible. And I hope you guys can, use some of these tools day in, day out. And I think one of the free tools today with, Skype, and for, especially to help you out with virtual interactions, you should just go ahead and do your initial study before even, making the product out there. And this is all the phase I'm talking about, which is like the initial stages of your product. So once we had our WhatsApp community, once we understood what they wanted to build, and we launched Preg Buddy. So we launched Preg Buddy as a peer-to-peer support community for women, both for emotional support and for experiential sharing. So we launched with content. We understood what content they're looking for. We had the right content at the right time available and personalized for the women for their journey. We helped them connect with the moms going through a very similar journey. Though we started with just trimester groups, we eventually moved to having more curated groups, because we were constantly understanding the way women were interacting, and we had more meaningful interactions by curating certain groups. And today we are a 300 plus strong couples community. We have helped more than 200,000 odd babies to be born into our family, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful to see how we have been growing in this phase. And one thing which I learned, being in the space, is that high CAC doesn't really mean high quality users. You may spend a lot of money in acquiring these users, but eventually what helped us grow is the trust led community. We understood what are the aha moments for our users. We understood what makes them solve their needs. We constantly listened to them. We constantly had interactions with them. And if you see our call logs, I think our last 15 to 20 call logs on every single day would be our users. So we would spend, like, you don't have to spend like hours and hours to do that, but at least, set aside like a 15 to 20 minutes or every day just to understand, how they're using the product. Maybe making some focus groups to understand how they would interact with any new feature you want to bring in. Always try to remove some of the features which they are not using. Don't get so attached to the feature you have built that you want them to use it, but rather iterate in a way that you can remove those features where women for our case users have like a seamless experience on your platform, right? And I think the way we have done is based on trust. We really feel the trust led community has worked for us, and we have seen it working for a lot of other people. And some of the impact which we have gained is the way we have reached out to so many women, and the way kind of women we have reached out to. We have women across professions like Indian Airlines. We have women from housewives to CXOs to nurses as well. And we also have women from the Indian cricket team. And we really did not spend a lot of money in getting these women, but it was all like a network effect that kicked in when we started solving real problems, right? And that's the power of network. That's the power of a trust-led community. So and I think that's that part. And the one thing which we learned, so this was like a year in to helping women with Preg Buddy. What we understood is that we get too attached to the solution which we're trying to provide to our users. Most of the time, we just we become the users. We try to become the users. We constantly use the product, and we feel that, yeah, this works great, this looks amazing, this is an amazing feature which we got in. But what we understood, that you shouldn't get married to your initial idea. Though you started with a specific motivation or a specific need in mind, but you need to evolve, and you need to constantly evolve, and you need to constantly ask the question why you're solving this, right? So one of the things which helped us do that is, while our users were beautifully getting support from our community and getting answers to most of their problems, the one thing which we constantly felt was they were trying to reach out to us for clinical support. So we had like more or less 10 to 15 emails every day where they would just give us send across their reports or scans, expecting us to be doctors. And we could have very easily just reverted by saying, please ask your gynecologist, please ask your doctor. And that's how most of our community would respond, because these are very clinical questions where she would be asking around a report or a range of symptom or a vital she is having. But once we constantly listened to these constant questions and emails that we were receiving, we understood that there is a gap, right? There's a huge gap. There's something which we realized later. There's a gap between a doctor and her own patient, where the woman would come onto platforms like ours to solve these problems, right? And this gap was something which we researched even further. We spoke to the doctors, the care providers, and the hospitals all our users were consulting with. And we understood that the problem was much bigger than what we were initially just thinking as a clinical assurance problem, right? So once we started interacting with the care provider side, which is not even our user base, when we started interacting with our care providers, we understood that in this digital era, doctors and care providers are trying to come online, but they were using tools like WhatsApp to stay connected with our users, and failing with scale, because they would just get constant questions. They wouldn't understand the medical history. They wouldn't understand any of the background to help women out at the time of need. And that's when we understood that we have a huge opportunity here to pivot, And this was a phase when we were trying to figure out our revenue models, and I'm sure you guys are in the stages where you would constantly figure out which model works for you. And for us, the constant the nature where we actually were open to make a pivot on a B2C model was what helped us anchor onto a very sustainable business model for ourselves. So that's when we actually launched connected care for providers. So we launched a SaaS tool, which is completely different from what we were doing with Preg Buddy. But we used Preg Buddy as the care continuity piece for our SaaS tool. So we understood that there is a clinical assurance gap, and we brought in some of the top hospitals as our clients in a very short period of time, like Apollo, Motherhood, Femint, and so on. So connected care became our core revenue model stream, and PregBuddy was used as a tool where women could connect with the providers once they have done their first consultation. So this kind of this entire story of mine of making this huge pivot was obviously very it's not an easy move to make in, but it's also something which helps you look at the bigger picture. So if you are not bogged down by your initial idea, you can always be open to explore more and more of these opportunities which are just right in front of you, but you just didn't want to look at it. Right. So I think I would suggest that you always keep an open mind on making pivots, and also always research on how other platforms are doing this, why things are working for them and why things are not working for you. Right. So in that way, you can constantly make those A/B testings around your product and your revenue models, and eventually land in a phase which works for everyone. Right. And yeah, so this is something which I think I have used so many times, and I think everyone, not just women, everyone should be using this to help you save time, money, and effort, especially in the early stages of your startup. So one thing that helped us really well is to build the network and community. So I've been a part of a lot of these communities, from Google Launchpad to Forbes under 30 to women tech makers, and everyone has been so helpful in so many ways in shaping what PregBuddy is today. That I really can't emphasize enough on the fact that you should always reach out to these communities and use it to your leverage, right? Some of the key things which I got help from was, the first thing is definitely it helps you open a lot of doors, right? So in initial days, there's no point working in silos, working alone, just building your product head down. It doesn't really help that way. So all you need to do is always be open to interact and look for partnerships for your initial growth, right? And these communities helped us open a lot of doors like that. So we found other entrepreneurs who were doing a similar, who were working in the similar space. We could partner with them to expand our offerings to a user, and also it helps you save a lot of tech cost. I know this will not be something which you will remember at a very high scale, but initial days tech is costly, and all these forums make sure that you have a smooth run for at least your initial stages of your product growth, so that you really don't have to think about the cost, and you're focusing more on what it actually matters, right? What the product actually converts to. So that's the second biggest point which helped us from the community and the network. The third thing is getting feedback and brainstorming. So this is like, I think this is like the biggest thing you should be always constantly doing as founders. Though you have your team, though I know you are like constantly 24/7 busy building the products, but always take out time to discuss some of the ideas that you're building, even before building, with the folks in your network, either from business leaders perspective, or just entrepreneurs who are in the similar space, or just entrepreneurs who had been in this run for maybe a couple of years more than what you guys have, and I've seen a scale which is a bit more than what you guys have. So that definitely helps you reduce a lot of those mistakes, and you would be surprised to know that most of the ideas that we think, or most of the models that we're thinking, are kind of tried and tested by someone. You would always see most successful ones, but there are ones which have actually not worked out, and those are the ones we should always avoid, right? And having these interactions and having these brainstorming sessions helps you avoid those mistakes. It helps you save the cost in making those mistakes. It helps you save the time in which you could have reached the growth despite being bogged down by those mistakes, right? So that's something which you should always be open to, interact with your network, interact and reach out to your network, and get some sort of a brainstorming session done, right? So and some, I think I've already told you some of the communities out there. You can feel free to reach out to me to help you connect with some of them and be part of it. I know it does take in some of the time of your regular product building phase, but it's totally worth it. So once you get into it, you will understand how much they would help you do that. And some of our incidences around a product or a partnership or just PR has been from our network, and we really haven't made an effort on putting Preg Buddy out there, but I think our network has done it. So we were able to very nicely find our promoters and supporters via this network who would always put Preg Buddy out there, because you yourself cannot be kind of everywhere to figure out all the opportunities. So someone else would help you out figuring out those opportunities for you. I hope I'm not really going very fast. I tend to do that. So if you have any questions, just please put it across, and I'll try to help you out during my session itself. Okay, yeah. So this is something which I think becomes like kind of a giant of its own, a kind of company building process on its own. So if you see, this is like a parallel process, right? This is like something which would be always on back of your mind, which would always be there as a phase, because fundraising is not something you should do when you want to do it, right? So just because you need the money right now for growth, you start fundraising. It rarely happens like that. So fundraising for us has always been a phase. It has been a journey. So what we strongly believe in is maintaining relationships with our network, right? And we have been, I think, fortunate and been at the right place at the right time to get the backing of some of the amazing business leaders in India. So we are actually backed by investors like Mr. Rajan Anandan, Mrs. Rekha Menon, we have Vicky Khosla, we have Jayant Kadambi from US, who have been tremendously supportive in our journey, and you wouldn't understand how much they know, how much they can help you, and some of the skills which you or your team would lack, they would always be there to help you out with by supporting in those aspects. So I think fundraising for us has always been about nurturing those relations, constantly being engaged with them, constantly taking feedback from them, making them part of your journey. So it can be either around building your product, or it can be either around scaling your product, or just about some of the things as you want to do with the people you're hiring, right? So even when we started building our initial core team, we had them interact with our investors. I'm not sure how many of you guys actually do that. So I know it's not necessary. I know it's not like they would directly get involved in figuring out whom you want to hire. But what we have seen is the way they get involved in the company building process helps them understand and helps them support you in achieving the bigger picture, right? So I think this would be my key takeaway while doing the fundraise, that you should always be in constant touch with them and help them, keep them posted, constantly nurture them, and make them your kind of a biggest supporter or biggest promoter, because that's your natural PR that you're getting out there, right? So that helps. Yeah, I think I think this is a given, and I'm sure most of the startups have struggled. Most of the startups have done it really well, and most of the startups have spent a crazy amount on doing this. So having a mind share with your users or with the community need not be need not be a parallel effort, I would say, need not be something which you have to spend a lot of money on, and and need not be something which you should be kind of ignoring on since day one. So for us, this was hard learning. So in the initial, I think 4 to 6 months of a product building, we were like every other folks who were just head down and focusing on building the product, and we rarely cared about talking about it till the product is launched and till the product has reached a certain scale. But I think the perception changed when we actually first got into Google Launchpad. So once we had that, we actually got the taste of putting ourselves out there, right? And it's not just about the PR; it's about the help and support you get once you have put yourself out there, right? So some of the things which such kind of a mind share would help is to get a tremendous amount of inbound support. So when I say inbound support, it's not just people talking about you. It's mostly about folks who are in the similar space reaching out to you for partnerships. It can be about people who are communicating with the target audience which is similar to yours, who wants to just talk about you or put you out there, right? And it can be about getting users, user growth along your product building way. Or it can be just about letting people know that there is a product like this in the market, and there would be they're solving this kind of a problem, and any support is welcome, right? So these kind of soft aspects is what you need not have like a parallel effort, but you should always have this in mind. And it has tremendously helped us, and I think it is hardly talked about or mentioned to a lot of entrepreneurs when they're starting to build their product or starting their journey. So I think some of the things which has helped us is getting featured on Google Play Store and App Store. So yes, this obviously helps you in getting your users, and obviously helps you making yourself get that trust among your users that we have been creating an impact. And some of the things which came in for us was we got we were a part of Forbes 30 under 30 Asia healthcare, and this was something which came inbound, right? And this was via one of our network, right? So and we also achieved or we also received a national healthcare award, which is NEA 2019. And again, this was something which came inbound, where government noticed our efforts in the women healthcare space, and they came to us. And these didn't happen because we were just building a product. These happened because we kept ourselves out there. We have been open to helping grabbing onto opportunities which come forward, and in this process we have represented PregBuddy across almost 10 countries, if I'm not wrong, where we have talked about our impact in women's healthcare space, how we are doing it, how we can help other people do it, and so forth, right? And I think media always talks about the work here that you're doing when it is usually come around from your network, and not something where you really are putting out there with money. So these are some highlights where it has helped us, and I think it's not about the PR again, it's about the support that you would get, and I would constantly focus on that aspect, right? So yeah. This is something I think is very important, or at least it's the need of the hour. How can we actually help others, right? How can we actually help others and give back some of your learning, some of your insights, some of your product and resources to others? The way we did it very recently is helping during the COVID crisis, by helping using our insights and using our network to help screen citizens. So my co-founder has been leading this entire initiative, where we are working with Arogya Setu to help millions of citizens screen themselves via our IVR process. And we have helped almost like I think to trace more than 5,000 odd high risk cases and be supportive to the government during this phase. And these are something which we were able to do because we are in the similar space. We have these learnings that we can help out with. It was easy for us to pool in our resources and get support from our community to extend such kind of a support. And we feel that this is something which you should be doing day in day out. I know it's very hard, but some of the easy tricks where you could do is by just having coffee meetings, right? I spend most of my weekends sitting in third wave interacting with folks, and trust me, I know there is a hidden incentive for me that I learn a lot from others than I think I contribute. So in a way, it's a give and take relationship, and trust me, it helps. A coffee meeting for an hour or two, it doesn't really break your schedule or take you away from your product building process, but it helps you build beautiful relations with your network, helps you give back some of the insights, and helps you share and learn things which you cannot just learn by reading all on your own. So this way, this is something which you should be focusing on constantly, and try to inculcate as an habit itself while you're building your product. So I think that is it. I really hope some of my insights have will help you in building your product or help you through your journey. And for rest of your questions or rest of your kind of challenges, you can always reach out to me. I can't guarantee if I can have all the answers, but I'll try my best to help you out. And you can reach me out on my email, or you can connect me on LinkedIn. And I just want to say thank you, and I hope you have like a wonderful and insightful evening ahead.